Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. In less than 2 years, we'll be talking about oil. The first drop is predicted to be coming by 2025. Is that a possibility? That's the biggest question. This gold that we talk about that is gold for, this oil that we talk about that is gold for all of us, is it a game changer or is it a crude mistake for us all? What will it do to the economy, especially looking that all the chips are on the table? A pipeline is in place, refineries are in place, sections have been demarcated, but also, most of all, what will happen to Uganda's economy? Dollars sunk at stake. Will this gold of oil be a blessing or a curse? That's the conversation tonight. Let's get to the panel here. Immediately on my left, Professor Sarah Sali, Dean at the School of Women and Gender Studies, Makerere University. Good evening, Professor.
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening, our viewers.
Making his maiden appearance on our show, Mr. Tom Ayebare Rukundo, who is a manager in the Economy and Finance Analysis Department, the Petroleum Authority there, Uganda. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening to our esteemed viewers.
No stranger in discussing anything finance or economy. Honorable Omara Paul, Otuke County, Member of Parliament. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Timothy. I'm happy to be back.
And I hope very soon we'll be having you because the budget is in the works there.
We have been working flat out for the last 3-4 days.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Next to him also makes his maiden appearance here, Abdul Biakagaba. I got it right. General Manager at Oroto Petroleum Limited, Uganda. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Tim. Good evening, viewers.
It's good to have you. I've seen a few
much.
reviews and I'm anxious to ask a few tough questions when it comes to oil here.
Usual questions.
Usual questions,
Yes.
especially with the contract extensions there that I saw. From the Ministry of Energy, Commissioner Mr. Malinga Hani, who is the Commissioner in Exploration, Development and Production. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, viewers.
It's good to have you.
Thank
and
you.
I hope Ugandans will be benefiting a lot in your explanation, especially on where you're taking us as a country.
I'll try.
You'll try, okay.
Yes.
So let me put some context to it. 6.5 billion barrels is what has been discovered 17 years ago in this country. 2 sections have been earmarked. One in Tilenga, which has 426 wells. But what is proven oil is 1.4 billion barrels. What the country can produce from Tilenga is 140,000 barrels per day. When we also go down to where Kingfisher is, 31 wells there, 40,000 barrels per day is what the prediction is. But we have a refinery, we have an East African crude oil pipeline. So those are the areas we're talking about. Billions of dollars sunk into this country in the pipeline, hopefully in the refinery, but most of all by Total Energies, Sinok, and we have shares in that. When we look at the shares that are there, Total takes 62% on the pipeline there. Uganda and Tanzania take equal shares of 15%. Sinok takes 8%. But with the drops of oil, we're talking about the environment, we're talking about the population, people who have been moved, but most of all, will it transform this economy? Will it be able to get rid of our debt? That's the biggest question there. We'll discuss the economy, but also we'll be discussing what the implications and the impact looks like. You can be part of the show. Go to our YouTube channel, drop your comment there, let us know what you think, or go to our X platform, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines, let us know what you think. The number is 0709 60 25 92. Drop your text or WhatsApp, either a question or a comment there, and let us know what you think. Mr. Malinga, it's only befitting that we start with you. The president last year launched in Kingfisher the drilling there. A lot happened, a lot of celebrations happened. He went on to talk about the drilling, talked about how he wants a refinery. The pipeline is also in discussions there. Where are we as a country, especially with our expectation to see 2025 a drop of oil? Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, it is true. Last year, we spudded the first well, development wells. Later, Total also continued with development wells. But all this came after the joint venture partners in 2022 announcing their final investment decision. In other words, They were telling the world that we are now ready to move forward. We have got the required resources as far as finances are concerned. Now, you talked about 17 years. Yes, it has taken long, but what have we been doing? First, we started the oil exploration as government in the late 80s, the early 90s. We have continued up today. Along the way, we attracted investment. The likes of Heritage, the likes of Hardiman, the likes of Talo, you mentioned it. And later, through the acquisition, we have seen Sinok, Total Energies coming on board. Now, when they came on board, they found us ready with most of the things. For example, we have the National Oil and Gas Policy of 2008. That policy outlines many things. It has 10 objectives, but each objective has scope of what is supposed to be achieved. Then later we put laws in place in 2013. In 2012 we also had the oil and gas revenue policy, which is also guiding, I think, this topic. Where is this money going? After having the policies, the laws in place, the new institutions came on board. The regulator, that is the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. Then also we had Uganda National Company. It was incorporated to do business on behalf of government of Uganda. It can also do its own business, but it is a Ugandan company. So after having those institutions in place, we have gone ahead to put the required regulations, and we have also gone ahead to enter into agreements. For example, HGA, IGA, and other agreements as far as the crude export pipeline is concerned. We have also participated in various engagements to make sure that by the time the production starts, we are ready. We are now members of the Extractive Industries International Initiatives or something like that, ITI. That one was done in 2022, and I think we are among the 26th country on the African continent and the 54th country worldwide. So all these ones are geared to transparency and accountability to make sure that there are processes. We have the Public Finance Management Act, and more so Part 8 speaks on petroleum revenues, how it is going to be received, how it is going to be used, and how it is going to be invested. So all those have been making us to prepare ourselves. So after the announcement and the spudding, we have so far drilled many wells, and the regulator will tell us that in Kingfisher we have drilled we have drilled 3 wells. On the other side, I think they are about 38 or 37. They will tell us the numbers, because some of us, we are now on the policy side. We just give direction, and they are the ones who are now following what is on the ground. So with all that in place, it has now prepared, we are getting prepared for the first oil. As much as it is oil exploration, it would have been oil production. That would be the best topic, because we have been doing exploration for many years. As indicated, over 17 years, we made a discovery, but before that we have been doing exploration. So there are a lot of things going on. We have brought the likes of Oranto, the likes of Ama Energy, UNOC is also now on board. So many have come on board to make sure that we utilize the available resources to make sure they extract this oil and gas for the good of this country. That policy has a very good objective, very good goals, and if you read it, you really see that it is for the benefit of us as Ugandans. I want to end there, sir.
And I'm going to come to Abdul, because he has a lot of experience. But before I leave you, the biggest question, and this is for every ordinary Ugandan, especially on information. You have talked about the final investment agreements there. You've talked about different joint ventures that you've gone through. At what point do these documents become public? At least Mr. Honorable Mara is here. Why don't our representatives have view of what you're talking about? The fine details in there.
Which documents are you talking about being public?
The final investment agreements, whatever joint ventures we have gotten into as a country, when do they become public for us, our representatives, to be able to scrutinize them?
These documents, when we entered into as governments, government of Uganda and Tanzanian government, at a certain level, we presented them in parliament. They were laid to table. So when we laid them in parliament, now that one means that as honorable member of parliament, being a representative, that means they have access to it. The agreements, the PSS, they are also in Parliament, and with time, we have made them available. We have even highlighted the key issues. Back to to the laws of 2013. Originally, our promotion was open door policy. You knock, we open, and we start negotiating. But now we have gone through a bidding process. So each stage we announce. So by the time we end up with either UNOC or DGR, we have to go through a process, or run through a process. So by doing that, it means people are brought, the public is on board. So I don't know how much you want us to make them public, but they are available. And more so with the institutions like Parliament and other institutions. And also there is a procedure according to the Access to Information Act 2005. There's a process you can go through and we can give you information.
So that means any ordinary Ugandan can walk to the ministry and request for this document?
Provided he follows the procedure required.
I'll come back to that one. I'll hold you to it. Abdul, let me come to you. With the experience you have had as a company in various and numerous projects, as a country, we have been majorly in agriculture. When you look at what our exports are and what we've been earning, when you look at coffee, 5 million bags, 500 million. When you look at tea, 60,000 kilograms there, 70 million. When you look at fish and its products, 50,000 kilograms and 50 million. When you look at Nigeria, Angola, the biggest producers of oil in the continent, and them having been in agriculture as Nigeria, and the instability and the causes that oil has brought there, when you benchmark on your experience and our lessons here as a country, are we ready?
Yes, we are ready, but still, we still need to do more. Of course, when we talk about 2 years from now to start producing oil, that is going to come with a lot of cash flow into our economy. And the question is, are we ready to absorb that cash flow? And my take is, if we do the right things in the remaining 2 years, yes, we'll be ready. If we don't, then we will not be ready. So a lot has been done so far, but I feel we still need to do more to be ready to absorb the kind of income that will be coming from exporting of crude. Because at the moment, our export income could be like $4 billion, and we are talking of 2025, 2026, adding on another $2 billion per year of oil coming in. And the question comes, are we ready as a country to absorb all that coming in when we have been used to the small export incomes you've discussed of coffee, tea, and the fish? So we need to do something extraordinary and make sure that one, as a country, at the national level, and also the local governments are capacitated to plan and be ready to absorb for the amount of cash flow that will be coming in with the production of oil. However, we don't have to absorb whatever income comes in. We could, as a country, make sure we put in place a reserve fund, which would allow us to buffer what we could take in comfortably and what we can't take in comfortably as we plan to do other projects in other industries. We have to remember that oil is an infinite resource. It will get finished. 30 years from today, we may not have oil. But oil comes with a lot of income, and a lot that, if not well managed, could end up being misused or could spur high levels of corruption. And that will not be good for this country. So in that case, that's why I advocate for having a reserve fund, and then work together, government, local governments, non-government organizations, and even international bodies, to be able to learn from other countries. You've talked about Angola, Nigeria, Colombia, Venezuela. They have had oil, but they have also had a lot of problems on how to absorb the dollars that come from the oil. And when you work together with other countries, work together with international bodies, work together as a nation, work together with non-government organizations, central government, local governments, you will have a plan and be able to discuss and say, yes, this income is coming in, but we don't have the capacity at the moment to absorb everything. So if we put some money on the side, absorb what we can as our economy grows, and then be able to absorb more and more as the years go by, then would end up with having a fund that could help us, help in funding other infrastructures in the future, other than borrowing from outside the countries. So I'm saying, yes, we are ready to start production of the oil, and we have to start, because actually I would have advocated that we started 5 years ago. Because finding oil in 2006, and we take 20 years to start producing the oil, comes with its own other challenges, because the international oil companies that have been investing in the exploration, they need to recover their money early enough. And if we don't start the production, then the recovery will not be realized. But of course, as I'm talking from the side of a private company, the government will tell you we still needed to have the right regulations in place, the right institutions to monitor and regulate. We needed to have the right policies, as Mr. Malinga has said, but those can always be developed as we continue to do the exploration and the production. Of course, what we have as the regulations may not be concrete like for today, and they will work even 20 years from now. They may need revision. So I still continue to argue that we should have started the production of the oil 5 years ago.
And let me stick with you before I come to Honorable Mara, especially looking at Angola pulling out of OPEC on quotas there, looking at Nigeria having instability, looking at really the minority benefiting from this. Where can we benchmark to be able to learn from these experiences?
So many African countries have been producing oil. We have seen the good they have done. We have also seen the bad they have done. It is a fact we have to admit that having oil, like any other resource, if well managed, you reap the good benefits. If not well managed, you not reap the good benefits, or you will reap less than what you would have been the optimum you would get from your natural resources. Not being in OPEC doesn't mean that we can't have where to benchmark. The unfortunate thing is sometimes when we go to do benchmarking, we only look for the good things. And it's always good to be open-minded that when you are benchmarking, also look at what has gone wrong, such that you don't repeat the same things that were done in a wrong way. So we could look at the African countries, also go outside the African countries. You could look at countries like Norway, which have managed their oil resources, I think, the best way world over. You could look at countries like Malaysia, which have also done so well in managing their oil resources. But I will mention that those countries have one thing in common, that from the word go, they made sure that they develop capacity of their people in all categories, not only the oil industry, even other government institutions, such that institutions are able to support each other in managing this resource. And then, two, they made sure that the levels of accountability and transparency were at maximum. And then they also made sure that there is limited political interference, so that people are able to do their things as professionally and ethically as can be done.
It's also tricky for you to be speaking as a private player when the regulator is, the policymaker is beside you. Well, let me come to Honorable Mara. Development has a cost. When we look at, especially the airport that is being talked about, $318 million borrowed, about more than 30 million also borrowed from Standard Chartered Bank in the UK to be able to ensure that infrastructure is in place. Is this development, all the money sunk in billions of dollars, is it worth it?
Thank you, Timothy, and good evening, viewers. Timothy, the magnitude of investments in the oil sector has been big for Uganda, and Commissioner Malinga will give us numbers, but my estimate now is over $10 billion. If you look at the airport, you look at the infrastructure, you look at the investments which is happening at Tilenga, for example, and all these foreign monies is coming from investors, but that is the money that we will have to pay back as a country. If we finish building the refinery at Hoima for the country, and we complete the ECOP oil pipeline, the total investment will go over $20 billion. Now, $20 billion is huge. In fact, the country's national debt is now $23 billion. So what does that one mean? It means that the investment in the oil sector is almost, when it is finally done, will be almost equivalent to our total national debt incurred over the years of our independence to date. So if you look at, as an economist, you look at the opportunity cost forgone, and you begin to calculate and say, for example, what if we had put this money into manufacturing, processing our coffee into finished products, processing our tea, our maize, our oil seeds, all our juices, all our fruits that are rotting in Luero? What would have been the ripple effects over the years? And I think we had this robust debate when we first came to Parliament in 2021. The President was there at Chankwanzi, and we talked deeply about this. And it's a fact that the construction work has delayed. Commissioner is here is saying they have not been doing anything. When I was in the bank, we funded the gas pipeline for Tanzania from Dar es Salaam to Mtwara, completed in record time. Tanzania is all and sweet home. And when the president actually went to Tanzania, remember what President Magufuli, the late, may God bless his soul, was actually quarreling when our president was there. It was quite embarrassing. We were slow at every pace. And both the political leaders and the technocrats need to take responsibility. So we have delayed. There have been so many opportunities actually foregone. And the ECOP bill that we passed, we capped the price of the oil. We said, okay, at this level, if the price now starts going up, then Uganda will begin to benefit from the windfall. But the world is moving fast towards clean energy. I was reading recently that China alone is now on EV vehicles, has overtaken Tesla in terms of clean vehicles, electric vehicles. UK has a determination by 2030 to get rid of all fossil fuel vehicles from United Kingdom. And that's where the world is moving. China is moving faster than the rest of the world. Now, so for us who are now excited now that we have discovered oil, we are investing humongous amount of money. And we have been, all the projected dates, we have not been able to meet it. I am not sure I'm going to put the feet of my brother on fire, that by 2025 we should have that oil coming out. We had a discussion with the Minister of Energy, Honorable Ruth Nakabira, when she made a presentation in Parliament. And she said the preparation on central processing, whatever, unit
Facility.
was at 30%.
Yes.
Now, if it is at 30%, what miracle are we going to have to get it to 70, the others remaining 70, so that by 2025 we can see that oil coming through?
And 2025 is next year.
And it's next year.
Yes.
And just last year, I think the conversation was last year, late last year, that we are at 30%. So maybe the commissioner needs to tell us, the central processing unit, when do we have it done? Is this oil really coming? So Timothy, then it brings me to your question that, you know, the
cost of development.
cost of development
Is it worth it?
has been huge. Our cry has been, and we have talked, you know, told this to the president. He said, we are running out of time. The world is not waiting for Uganda to extract its oil, and the oil prices will still be very good, and then we romanticize and feel good. No, the world is moving towards clean energy. And so if we don't move quickly, that is why even the president of France was slapped by environmentalists. They were demonstrating everywhere. Total Energies was on fire, saying, you know, you need to move away from Uganda because you're destroying environment. So my point is that as much as this money is good, my colleague here has talked about $2 billion coming in every year, and indicating that we might not find, it will be too much for us to absorb. My brother, we have $23 billion in debt. So any $2 billion coming every year is good news for us. We will need to pay off our debt. Secondly, we have this broken infrastructure in Kampala and all over the country. And indeed, President agreed with our conversation that this money should only be used for development of infrastructure of our country and settling our national debt. Because you have and we are going to continue to accumulate it. If it comes in 2025, I will be one of the happiest. Because right now, Timothy, this financial year, our debt rollover, domestic, is 8.3 trillion. It has moved now, in this budget we are dealing, to 12 trillion. So you first of all need to deal with your rollover, settle the debt that you incur every financial year. So if I have $2 trillion, $2 billion, I would, that's about 7.58 trillion. Then I would settle my rollovers. It becomes lighter. The weight of debt becomes lighter. And our budget, the fiscal space, will be widened and will be able to really deal with the budget demands of our country. You imagine, we projected the budget ceiling was 60 point something trillion. It has been cut by 2.7 trillion. It's now 58.3. Why? Because we don't have money. Anything that we do, we need to borrow. So the alternative that we have forgone, I don't even want to see it. It's big. The only thing that the technocrats and the political leadership need to do is making sure that we move quickly, we extract this money, so that this $2 billion, which is coming every year, I can tell you we'll find what to do with it.
And before I get to Tom, the question I want to put to you, you talked about manufacturing, especially there. The thing that especially Abdul really went past is Angola imports about 80% of its oil products there, and 20% locally made. We export almost everything we send out of this country.
Yes.
The crude oil also, about 60% of it that will be going out is raw materials.
Yes.
So really, what value add are we doing here?
I think that is why the president has been very emphatic that as much as, yes, we need the money, that's why we are building the crude pipeline. So we warm this oil from ground. It's sticky, by the way. So you put fire on it, the heat, gas on it, it becomes liquid. Then you can run it through the pipeline up to Tanga, and then you either refine it from there or board it on ships, and then they will go. The building of the refinery at Hoima will help us now to get the full benefits from the oil. You will have everything. You have your petrol, your diesel, the biocarbons, all those necessary bioproducts. You will have it, and then you as a country will be able to export this thing and use it domestically, so you don't have to import some of the fossil fuel byproducts that we import from other countries. So, but that's another $4 billion that needs to be sunk in there. And I don't know how long it will take for us to do the construction work, and we complete and we do the refinery.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Tom, let me come to you, especially the bluntness that the Honorable has had. You as a regulator, how are you governing this area? How are you regulating this area, especially knowing that you have the big boys here? How is it going?
Okay, thank you, Timothy, and good evening once again to our esteemed viewers. Timothy, there's quite a lot to unpack. The Honorable has made a number of statements and various other aspects, but to give Ugandans comfort, the Petroleum Authority of Uganda is a statutory body. We were established by an act of parliament, so Section 9 of the Petroleum Exploration, Development and Production Act of 2013. We became operational in 2015, and we currently have over 215 staff. Now, in undertaking our work, there are a number of aspects that we regulate. Many of them include things like resource management, cost monitoring, national content, petroleum data management, and most importantly, the economic and financial aspects of the sector. So, that being said, we have the unique mandate to ensure that the oil and gas resources we have in the country create lasting value for the society and for all Ugandans, but also that we continue to ensure that Uganda remains an optimal investment destination. So, where we are today, as you heard from the Commissioner, FID was taken. FID stands for the Financial Investment Decision. That is a decision gate where the joint venture partners that are developing the resource in the country agree to sink in considerable sums of finance and capital to develop the oil and gas resource they have in a jurisdiction. What FID ushered in is it unlocked an investment of over $15 billion. That, by any stretch, is the biggest investment in this country across any sector. And if you run the math, you're looking at almost 1/3 of our GDP in one sector, right? So currently, the upstream is on schedule. As you mentioned, Tilenga, we will have over 420 wells. Today we have 3 rigs drilling 24 hours a day. And we anticipate production of about 190,000 barrels per day. Kingfisher is also on track, 31 wells as you mentioned. The rig is also constantly drilling. And the construction of the various facilities is ongoing. I need to make it clear that the construction of the oil and gas facilities is different from the brick and mortar construction that you have for housing. You are building an industrial complex. Some of the industrial components that you will bring are already pre-assembled. Think of your car, right? When they're manufacturing your car, by the time they are done with the body, they simply install the engine. So there are factories around the world where cars are built every 10 to 30 minutes, right? So it is a similar process. However, the contracting has been split up to ensure that we maximize national content and local value retention. Now, there are other commercialization projects that we have, like the East African crude oil pipeline and the refinery, as has been mentioned. Many of our viewers will be aware that the coating plant in Tanzania was commissioned earlier this month or late last month. So what that means is that the line pipe that we have received, over 300 line kilometers, will now be coated and then further transported, and it will be subsequently laid along the route to build that pipeline to the port. For the refinery, we are in discussions with a new partner. We are trying to finalize the commercial agreements to ensure that the project is brought on stream, as that will be the industrial game changer for this country. Now, let me get into the numbers, because there's been a lot of conjecture about a delay, whether the investment is worth it. But there is a saying that if you want to go far, you go together. But if you want to go fast, then you go alone. So what we have done in the oil and gas space is we have taken our time, gone slow, and we are ushering together, not only in the sector, but also with other sectors of the economy. As an example, from a national content perspective, the oil and gas sector today employs over 13,000 individuals. 90% of those are Ugandan, right? And of those, over 4,500 come from the oil and gas districts, and over 2,500 are women. So there is significant effort to ensure that the benefits are particulating to all levels of this economy. In terms of contracting, contracts worth over $1.8 billion have been awarded to Ugandan companies. I repeat, 1.8 billion. That is almost the equivalent of the cost of building a dam, one of the biggest dams that we have in this country. And those are the contracts that have been awarded to Ugandan companies. Skilling. We have skilled over 13,000 Ugandans in various trades. We have domiciled international certifications in this country. You no longer have to travel to Europe, to Angola, to Nigeria to be certified to work in Uganda. We actually have many Ugandans that have gone on to work in Mozambique, in Angola, in the Middle East, and the like. Aspects around technology transfer. Over 19 partnerships have got contracts, and that has facilitated the technology transfer from the international partners that are more experienced to their local partners that they have here. Enterprise development. Over 2,500 Ugandan enterprises have received enterprise development trainings in various aspects, HSC, contracting, various other aspects. We have engaged over 6,000 companies in workshops, conferences, you name it, they like. So there has been a deliberate effort to ensure that all avenues where value can be derived is tapped. I will move on to a particular aspect that the Petroleum Authority is very passionate about, and that is what we call the linkages. Linking the oil and gas sector to other sectors of Uganda's economy to ensure that the investment that is coming in oil and gas will facilitate broad-based economic growth and development. We've undertaken extensive research in partnership with the private sector under various sectors, including health, education, agriculture, real estate, tourism, to further define what investment opportunities the oil and gas sector will generate, how those opportunities can be tapped, and clearly lay a roadmap for each of those sectors to facilitate their sophistication in tandem with the oil and gas sector.
Tom, let's stay there on the linkages.
Yes.
And I would like you to address agriculture and tourism, because those might be the most affected in both, if we look at both the sectors of Tilenge and also if we look at Kingfisher.
Yes.
What is the linkage between these two? And isn't oil and gas really taking the advantage of both of them there when you look at them?
Thank you, Timothy. Now that's a very interesting question. What we've seen, given the time that we have taken to develop this resource, during the period of exploration, we had a peak period in about 2013, from about 2011 to about 2015. It was a peak period where we had peak activities in the field. What we saw was that most of the expatriates that we had coming in, right, came to work, but then when they were also off, they went ahead to partake in the tourism products that we had in the country. We also saw a spike in the consumption of agricultural produce that we had in the country, especially from those individuals that were working in the oil and gas sector. I can tell you today, there are plans to have camps of over 4,000 individuals in this country in specific areas. Each of those individuals will consume produce, they will consume food, and there is a deliberate effort to ensure that that food is sourced locally. And in doing so, that it is sourced locally, but it also meets the international standard, such that when the demand from the oil and gas sector wanes, we now have enough capacity to export to an international market that pays a much higher price than the local market. Now that ties in to the second international airport that we are building in Hoima.
And I want to come to the airport, but I want to sort out agriculture because,
sure.
Tom, you're giving us a very rosy picture.
Yes.
And
the picture is totally misleading.
And I want to be gradual and really so that the people that are watching us are really benefiting from this. The reason I asked you about regulation as Petroleum Authority of Uganda is with 62% of what Total Energies has in this. How are you regulating this big boy, especially when I have seen different reports that talk about people that have been affected by this project, what they have done, especially with the floods flowing into the different areas they're in. We're talking about their processing facility there, the impact it has had on communities. People who have been affected, the numbers from Total say 5,000, numbers from you say 18,000, 31,000. Then the reports that are coming out are talking about 100,000 people. So are you regulating? Are you managing the cost? What are you doing about the ecosystem, the environment? That would be something that we'd like to know, because agriculture is the backbone of this country. with 68% of the people there and over 90% indirectly affected, you're giving us a rosy picture. Yes, food will be there, that is beneficial, but people have been affected, and you're not talking about the regulation and coming down to clamp on some of these things.
Timothy, the only constraint that you have is time. Because what we have done in the oil and gas sector in Uganda hasn't been done anywhere else. We are lucky that we are able to develop the oil and gas projects when Uganda passed the latest international environment laws. These were passed recently. The projects have all been subjected to environmental social impact assessments that meet the world standard, right? They were passed with a few conditions, and they're being monitored to ensure that those conditions are met. So the level of regulation that the oil companies we have in this country are facing is unprecedented. Now, there is a big confusion when many Ugandans link the 62% that Total has in the pipeline to the oil. That is false, and I will tell you categorically. The oil we have under the ground is managed by the government of Uganda on behalf of every citizen in this country, right? We then signed petroleum production sharing agreements with the international oil companies. What those agreements do is stipulate how much resource these companies can be rewarded for their investment. So there is oil they will be paid to compensate for the money they've invested. But after that oil, we now share. Now, our production sharing agreements have been analyzed by the IMF and numerous non-governmental organizations around the world. These publications are online, they're free, they're publicly available. They will all tell you that of the production that we have in this country, government will receive over 70%. Now, Timothy, I will tell you, there's no country I have seen at the level where we are. We have never produced a barrel of oil.
True.
But we have entitlement of over 70% of the crude in the ground, right? Now, that crude has to be turned into money. To do that, we need two aspects. One is the refinery, two is the East African crude oil pipeline. Now, the East African crude oil pipeline is an avenue to the international market. Now, people talked about the delay. Part of that delay was a disagreement between Uganda and the companies on whether to have a pipeline or a refinery. That discussion took about 2 years, right? And we finally got to a middle ground where we said we're going to have both. And we said no project should delay the other. That is why both of them are moving, right? Now, Total has a stake of 62% in the pipeline. The pipeline is purely a transport avenue. Think of it like if you had a farm, right? You and your siblings had a farm. But then you then decide to buy a truck to get the produce from your farm to the market. So the pipeline is that truck. It doesn't give you rights to the oil. So that confusion is categorically false, right? But then government is taking forward the development of the refinery. The refinery now will give us security of supply. So the $1 to $1.5 billion that we spend on importing petroleum products in this country will now be saved. But then we'll also have capacity to produce not only for the local market, but also for our surrounding countries. And we will also generate jobs, money, value addition, and the like.
Okay.
You had a question on the regulation. Timothy, I will tell you, there are a lot of lies in the public. There was a picture of East Africa tweeted by an MP of the European Parliament that highlighted that the pipeline is going to cross over 240 rivers. When I counted, there are not more than 240 rivers in Africa. So it basically means that there is no land in East Africa and the pipeline, and those of us who are here are simply swimming the whole day. So there is a lot of conjecture that is in the public domain. We are operating in a sensitive environment. But I would like to tell Ugandans that your interests are being handled to the highest level. The players that you have in the space are listed on not more than 2 markets internationally. They have a direct incentive not to play around, but also the regulator is ensuring that things are done to the highest standard.
Okay.
One last point.
Yes.
Numbers do not lie. So far, this sector has generated over $1.3 billion in tax revenue. That is a fact. And that is before we even produce a single barrel of oil. When production starts, we anticipate to receive, as you've heard, on average, about 2 billion. But there will be years when it's much more.
Over what period of time?
Over about 25 years.
No, I mean the 1 point, the tax component.
Oh, so the tax component, that ranges from about, I think, just under, from about 2010 till 2023.
Okay.
So about $1.3 billion, right?
Thank you very much. Professor, let me come to you. First and foremost, I saw you happy when they talked about the number of women involved in this area. So I was
That was
also
intentional.
Yeah.
That was intentional.
We'll come for you.
That was intentional.
and I know that was intentional. So may I put my thumbs up and saying my professor is happy with this one.
Okay.
But weighing on the benefits and the backdraws in this area of oil production, a lot of nice numbers being said there. Hopefully 2025, there are some saying April 2025, others saying towards the end of 2025. When you weigh in and look at this, the benefits versus the backdrops here, your thoughts on them?
Thank you, Timothy. I think, well, regardless of the benefits and the challenges, I think if you look at the demographics of our country, they definitely has to be a strategy of how we are going to manage it. You know, we talk about a country which has a population of 67% people aged 15 years and below, and around 80% of the population being youth. And with improvements in health such as immunization, these people are going to live. And hopefully they are going to live to a ripe old age. So there has to be a plan for these people. It's true agriculture has done well and has babysat us for a very long time. But now with the issues we are seeing, basically, I mean, there was death in extension, but with the crisis we are seeing in the agriculture sector in terms of production, in terms of it's rain-fed, so it is very vulnerable to precarious weather conditions. And then, of course, the other one which has been coming up is fisheries, but of course we cannot fish forever. Then you also talk about tourism. So all these are likely to have been able to make a significant contribution. But I think the way our population is racing, we needed to think of alternatives to the economy. Otherwise, we shall have a bigger crisis in future. So the exploration of oil, the construction of the developments we are seeing around the oil sector are very welcome. But your question is, do the benefits outweigh the challenges or vice versa? Of course, it's still early days to see what the oil sector is going to be like. And because it's still, of course, the challenges that have been raised around oil, the oil sector in Africa is who gets to benefit, political interests, corruption, mismanagement, and these are benchmarking some countries that have not done well or that have had particular trajectories. But I think for me, those particular trajectories of those countries give us lessons or provide us with lessons of what to avoid as we go forward. So for starters, we appreciate the fact that many locals are being employed, because by 2016, I remember someone coming from the ministry that was dealing with either minerals or natural resources or oil or whatever, but then someone who was connected. And he came to make an address at the university on one Saturday, and his challenge or his complaint was that we are not doing enough to produce the right skills. And I remember his complaint at that point was, even for forklift drivers, they were getting them from Kenya because we were not producing forklift drivers. And he was saying, so if you can't even produce forklift drivers, then do you have hope for the other things? So you told us about how many people are engaged and how many women. That is very welcome. We hope at a later time you're going to tell us what actually they are doing. Because if we have killed our technical institutes and we are having to import labor at such a low level, that becomes a challenge. But anyway, what can we do? You asked very well about the linkages between agriculture and tourism, and those are very important linkages, and he gave some facts. And I think the problem in this country has always been the balkanization of development. And of course, part of the interest behind, part of the drivers behind this balkanization of development is that everyone wants to control a budget, okay? So if I'm in oil and gas, then I'm in the ministry, which is, I think, Ministry of Minerals and whatever, natural resource development. Then someone else is in gender, someone else is in agriculture, someone else is in labor. There seems to be sometimes, okay, they will have workshops, they will have meetings. They will think there will be fora like the Chankwanza meetings Honorable talked about. But at the end of the day, beyond fighting for budgets, beyond fighting for mandates, I think here is the time where you need to plan very well with the people. Of course, we have had some complaints that not everyone who was supposed to be compensated was compensated, but we hope that is not true, because of course there are issues of around compensation and what's the appropriate time of compensation, and the gender issue around this. Did you compensate the right owners, or you compensated men for things which were supposed to have gone to females? But those are things to work with. But when you review the literature and you ask, of course there's been this common narrative that oil is a curse in Africa, but I want to say we are not pathologically engineered to be that. We can learn the right things and avoid the pitfalls. But what are some of the documented things for benefits of this sector to accrue to the people? One, the strict laws and penalties, and all of them have talked about regulation. But beyond regulation, the strict laws and penalties, people talk about things like vandalism. If people just decide because they are politically unhappy to vandalize an oil pipeline, they should be penalized. We've seen this happening in Nigeria. Each time people are unhappy, the pipelines get burst. Strict laws against corruption. From that, because again, if you review the Nigerian story, you're told about how, in spite of having 4 big refineries, little is refined there, largely because of interest. There's an interest in not having the oil refined there than it refined elsewhere, which then makes it actually more expensive than it would have been if it was refined locally, in terms of just the price of gasoline at the pump, but also the spin-offs, the other benefits that come with that. Other things of how can we ensure the benefits outweigh the challenges. You talk about revenue sharing formula. I know right now I think what Uganda is trying to do is by trying to give those who are local and directly affected an upper hand in getting the jobs or the opportunities that are there. But beyond that, when the billions of dollars come to, my hope and prayer is that this is going to be a national resource. And it will not necessarily be a resource of those from where it has been extracted. Of course, there are things you can do there, like ensure, I mean, you must have done environmental impact assessments to ensure that there's no destruction, so that and you haven't told us about dumping, because where does the oil waste go? We know those that neighbor the oceans dump it in the water. So the challenge around those of us who are inland, where shall we dump? And that could be one of the things where you discuss cost benefit, because if the dumping is going to occur locally and destroy the soil, then you have the same concerns you raise about agriculture. But the experts are going to explain. But beyond those direct benefits, there are revenue sharing, but also national development in general. Another thing we can look at, that is always cited in the literatures, job creation and community involvement, that has been articulated. Strict environmental laws, I hope with the ECOP saga that has been addressed. But also the issue of adequate and prompt compensation. You hear different stories from people who are in those areas. We don't know whether these stories are true or not, or there are ulterior motives beyond that. But you hear stories that some people who were displaced years ago have never been compensated. Total or whoever is developing says they compensated to the maximum. So between there, you don't know what happens. But also another thing we need to be conversant about as we do these things, because you see the regulator, the implementers, the policymakers are here, is also to plan for posterity beyond the oil drilling, what will happen in terms of recovery. We know the countries that did this before environmental interest was that high, never thought about the environment. And right now they are having to be saddled with how do you rejuvenate areas, or how do you restore areas post the drilling if the oil has run out. But I think most importantly is for us to appreciate that there is no way around it. Because of our population growth, we needed to find alternatives. And the most important thing is to avoid what people have said is about the oil curse. But the oil curse is not just corruption and vandalism, but sometimes we, the political elites, may not necessarily care very much about what happened, because we plan with our interests, because we have we're in a different position and in a fairly advantaged position. But I think basically for this to benefit the whole country, we know there's a Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. We hope and believe that the data is constantly being collected, and we hope then the revenues will go to the right places where they need to go. That's the only way, if you do national development, that the benefits can outweigh. But if you're not intentional about that, then actually the challenges can outweigh. But I think as we also do this, there's another body of literature which maybe is becoming debunked, but anyway, it exists, where they argue that wherever states have, where most of the GDP comes from the natural resource extraction, some of those states don't pay much attention in the human capital development, because they can actually survive without the people. Now, other countries which don't have natural resource extraction but have the people as the major resource will pay more attention at what people are saying. So since we are coming at the tail end, we have an opportunity to balance and say, okay, how do we invest in the people so that we don't forget the people, because we have billions of dollars. I mean, even if you task Ugandans, you're not going to get $2 billion a year. So sometimes that can create an incentive to say, to hell with you. You want to demonstrate toy around the streets, go on for me, as long as the oil wells are secure. But it is important that we merge the two so that we actually use the oil resources or the reserves as are being recommended to do human capital development. Because if you do not do that, and people feel alienated from this development, they will come for it each time they're unhappy.
Timothy, if you'll allow, that's an important point. And I will demonstrate it. If we have 13,000 people working in the sector, and we've been able to achieve 90% of them as Ugandans, it clearly shows you that it is something, there's been a lot of forethought. Institutions were developed before, the capacity was built, and that capacity is now working. Over 4,500 are from the local areas. They are recommended by the communities in the local area. You must be well behaved. You must be respected in your community. Then they recommend you.
Just hold on. Something Professor said that that is itching. Something very patent. She said, "What are they doing?" Because you could tell us 4,500 and 90% is a very good number, but the question is, what are they doing? Because we know they're about over 4,000 plus expatriates,
Let me give you
earning $2,000, between $1,000 to $2,000 on a rig a day.
So, with due respect to the regulator, let me give you some facts. As a committee of parliament, we were taken to, they have a very nice facility, I think somewhere in Hoima, where they're learning to do, the young people are learning to do welding and playing around with some
driving
tools.
forklift.
Yeah, which is very important. But the Total Energies and Sunok, who are doing that work, and the ones who are on ECOP, they want highly trained people. If you are welders, you must be first
Class welder.
welder,
Certified.
certified, internationally certified, for you even to touch those tools. You first
for
listen.
specific components.
Yes, you first listen.
And there's a just
So the majority of people he's talking about are people who are providing food for the guys who are working there, the waitresses, the cleaners, the drivers, the guys, who are, but not the top-notch job. Even the local companies he's talking about. As Parliament, by the way, there was a private member's bill to try and amend the local content law. Yes. Because we realized that these so-called Ugandan companies are not Ugandan companies. They're registered in Uganda, but they are foreign-owned. If you look at our, I'm a banker, you need to go and look at our the foreign currency reserves at Bank of Uganda.
3.4.
Eh? 3.4. It went actually up to about 3.8. I don't know whether it has reached $4 billion. If this is actually the largest, and I want to agree with him, it's the largest investment ever we have made as a country. It's $15 billion. That's huge money, going to 20. Where is the money?
Okay.
The money has been literally externalized. I don't see it at Bank of Uganda. What you're talking about is basically cham little money for our local people there.
Okay.
Now, what are the local people in Hoima? What can they do? What skills do they have? And what are they earning?
Let me allow Tom to respond.
Tom is misleading.
Because if I leave it the way it is, it won't be fair.
Please protect me. Please protect me.
Please respond in a minute so that we take a break and come back.
We need to send down the Ministry of Labor to go and find out.
We work very closely with the Ministry of Labor, Gender, and also with the Ministry of Internal Affairs.
Yes.
No expatriate is brought into this country where we have capacity. We have taken significant effort and time to build capacity of Ugandans. I can assure you, walk into Total, walk into Sinok, walk into Oranto, all of them, about over 85% Ugandan nationals. At even the highest
We
level.
want an independent report.
Fine.
Okay.
But wait.
Yes.
Wait. We even have Ugandans that have been sent on expatriation. They're working in Nigeria, in Abu Dhabi. We have built the capacity. Yes, there are certain areas where we are not yet there. Certain components that are highly specialized that require that certification. But it is not all of them.
Okay. Thank you. Let me read some feedback that has come through. Hello, Timothy. This is Bwango from Fort Portal City. The oil exploration and refinery will definitely ease the current domestic pressure of escalating foreign debt. Basically, I was not happy with the South African companies who began the drilling activities in Semliki to Lake Albert in Bulisa. Those companies included Hardman Rock, Heritage, which later handed over to Tullow, Sinok and Total, which merged. Remember when we sued Tullow in the UK court? Let's pray that the current contractor should not disappoint us as how, like Tullow did. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you too. Thank you for the show. I think the biggest problem with the oil sector is the secrecy in which it's shoddy. All we see is strange things on Twitter, plus the stuff we hear from our friends and employees at the bar. What I would like to see is the exact vote for which our oil revenue has been earmarked. If the discussion cannot get to specifics, I'm afraid the oil blessing will unravel terribly. If the plan is to use oil revenue to pay RDCs, tell us. I'm not sure about that one. Thank you for the show. What is the return on investment of the oil exploration beginning in 2025? Okay. That one, the commissioner will respond. How are the indigenous people protected within the context of Tilenga projects? It's setting off soon, yet many people are still demanding for compensation for compulsory land acquisition of the land by the government. That one, Tom will respond to it there. Thank you, gentlemen and lady, for the program. My question is, however, are we ready enough to have everyone benefit from our own oil? When corruption is at the climax in this country, I'm already beginning to think of a supplementary budget, which will be the order of the day from different ministries. And finally, definitely the country's GDP will increase, domestic budget pressure will end. Peter Sunday there. Let's take a quick break, and when we're done, we'll be back.
Fred!
Osmosis.
Freddy! Fred Dollar, my boss, CEO Inojo, the general of generals, the conqueror of conquerors, the first and the final, the sky above the skies, the promised land, the terms and the conditions, the international king crocodile, the source of the
Osmosis.
Nile.
I don't have money today.
Just take a polite loan of 200k to stock my shop. The signs and symptoms of success. The bank commander, not the bank teller.
Why hassle for a loan when you've got MTN Momo? Wesotinge. Use the Momo app or dial *165*5# for all quick loans. Choose from the different loan options from our partners and get one that works for you. Together, we're unstoppable.
Nyati Motion Pictures brings you Tuko Pamoja Kigezi segment. If Uganda is the Pearl of Africa, then Kigezi must be the Pearl of Uganda. Learn about how the Bachiga, Bafumbira and Batwa are the oldest republicans in Uganda.
Kigezi as such.
We are different groupings. Bachiga,
Batwa,
Bafumbira.
and there was no king as such.
In some of these other places, they say every Mchiga is a king in their home.
They have always been Republicans.
My great-grandfather called Katuleje.
He resisted them.
Whom I talked about.
This queen mobilized the whole of Kigezi, Rwanda to rebel.
Premiering on Saturday the 4th of May, 3 to 8 p.m. at Ndere Center, Ntinda.
To get a ticket, call 0778-787-660. Tuko Pamoja?
Welcome back from that quick commercial break. My name is Timothy Nyangweso, and this is the last leg of Behind the Headlines. I'm joined by Professor Sarah Sally Tom, Honorable Mara Abdul, and Commissioner Malinga there to discuss what is happening in the oil production there. How will we benefit from it come 2025, where the first drop is supposed to be here, especially looking at posterity of this country? 25 to 30 years of this oil production, shall every Ugandan benefit? Professor, please allow me to start with you. Especially I'm conflicted between a question that was sent here, and it's something you and I have talked about some time back. What a Ugandan cares about really is the barrel, the price at the pump.
The pump, yes.
That I want to see that what I put in my car, in my border, takes me longer, that I'm saving more money in my pocket there. So I think that's what the trickle-down effect. And this is going to be a twofold question, Professor. How will it benefit every Ugandan? My second part is something you hinted on. As a country, that someone mentioned here, is our internal challenges, corruption, politicking of these things. Something Tom hinted on, a decision on whether a refinery or a pipeline that took 2 years. Politicizing decisions like that. Or the insecurity in the region. We talk about ADF, we talk about all these things that are happening in the country. When you look at that and look at oil production and then also look at the benefit to every Ugandan, is that possible?
Thank you very much, Timothy. I think the Ugandans can benefit if, as I said before, the resources, of course someone talked about a reserve, and I think if we finish paying our debts and then we have a reserve and we have a good National Planning Authority, and the Ministry of Finance and Planning, and with good data, we should be able to channel these things where they are. But we can look at the things which directly impact and make people believe they are reaping. You've talked about the pump price. If the pump price remains high, there will be a problem. And I'm saying this because not, like I gave the Nigerian example, for a long time, they produced oil, but oil was very expensive because they didn't have refineries. The oil would have to go to the Scandinavian countries, be refined, and then returned. So that journey alone made it even more expensive than anything. Of course, they have later on had 4 refineries, but still there are challenges of refining it because again, of interest, whether political and economic interest. Sometimes you have the oil refining externalized when actually they have capacity within the country to refine. And that's why I said I hope as a country, with the lessons learned from the region and from the continent, we shall not repeat those kinds of things. Because if we repeat that, then there's not going to be much benefit. We are going to take much longer to earn our return on investment, to realize returns on investment, and people will become unhappy. And when people become unhappy, they will go for that infrastructure direct. And again, the key example we have is you have this whole economy in the Niger Delta, which thrives on kidnapping. And I don't know whether you've watched the documentaries, where actually they are even available to be interviewed. And in one of the interviews, they were telling how actually they kidnap, how they get info on the ships that are coming, of who is there. The prime targets are Americans, are Europeans. If they are very broke that day, they might kidnap any Asian. But they say that's a waste of time because there's no compensation. They don't have much time to kidnap locals. And this ties in with what you're saying, insecurity in the region. Because for some unfortunate reason, the oil well is also where we are having problems with ADF. So we are hoping that those who have been sabotaging us, one, will not sabotage the infrastructure as it continues its way to Tanga. But also, we are hoping that there will be returns on investment realized by several people, because if they are not, people will organize there and it will be a problem. But then the other thing beyond the pump price, where you can get good return on investment, is, as he's saying, if they work with other sectors and create a simple thing like jobs. Our big population is going to demand jobs. They are not going to just be happy having smartphones and the rest. They are going to demand jobs, and jobs that pay. I mean, today you have many younger people who cannot take any job because they want a job of a particular time. But anyway, they are going to demand jobs. So if people are going to continue being educated, and the education sector has done its best to churn out these people, you just need to count the numbers at every graduation. The question is, where are they going? Okay? And so I would be happy if the training in oil and gas is occurring in our institutions so that there's direct. Because there's the direct employment of the people to get revenue, but also improvement in the courses the universities are giving. So there you have a forward and backward linkage in terms of training. But if the experts are all being externally trained, I know where we don't have capacity, we can externalize the training. But if everything is being externalized, then our training in our universities remains basic. The products there will also become unemployed because they will not have the requisite skills to work in the sector. And you know, this is a sector which is developing very fast. So you have to keep up. But if the local institutions, the local universities, the technical institutions are involved, then you can have the spin-offs in the education sector that we are producing the requisite skill. So those can get employed. But also, if they, I mean, everyone here has talked about investing. If you have the right income, then you invest in a lot of other sectors, people can get jobs there. So if you can, with the population we are producing, if we can plan and say how many we shall get off the street. Right now, I think we create 700 jobs a year or something like that. So if we can target the 13,000 a year or at least 10,000 a year as a result of the oil when it begins flowing, then, and I know maybe that will be like maybe more than 5 years. It's not going to be, next year will be certain things, understanding how the thing runs.
God forbid, God forbid.
Okay, but if you are able to give us jobs next year, we shall be happy. So if that then happens and it occurs every year, then people will say actually the sector is working. We all don't have to directly benefit, but as long as we see where the money is coming and the accountabilities are clear, then that is it. But if it continues with the secrecy and then people don't know, then you give room to speculation. And when you give room to speculation, there's information, there's disinformation, there's misinformation, and then everyone makes up their own picture and go away with that. Yeah.
Professor, the local intrigues in this country, when we talk about politicizing such things, how do we get buy-in? Because this is a good, viable project. How do we get buy-in? Because fortunately, Honorable Mara is aligned. But when you get people that are going to sing about this, tell you the oil is going in a certain direction, it's going to a certain region, certain people are benefiting. How do we take that intrigue of politicizing? How do we get the corruption out of this, especially insulate it from all this and bring buy-in for everyone?
Maybe you can talk about, thanks, maybe you can talk about insulating it against corruption, but I cannot say whether there's corruption in it as of now, because we don't have evidence. But it is important that we are aware of those as potential pitfalls. But I think the question you raise, which is very important, is around the politicization. For a long time, we used to joke with our friends from Hoima, because it was no longer Hoima, it was Hoilima, because it was clear that the oil had a Hoima identity and a Kinyora identity. Now, I think there's a problem if that is carried further and only that region benefits. And that's why I said earlier that this has to be seen as a natural resource. I think there used to be laws on land about how much you own as an individual, and below that is a resource for the state.
It's owned by the state.
So oil is owned by the state. And I think it should be packaged, marketed, and talked about and discussed like that. The discourse around oil should be as a natural resource, in as much as the locals around should have affirmative action, they should have opportunities to them, and they should have anything that goes wrong with environmental pollution or whatever, attention has to be paid to that. But ideally, there should be a national resource which should have a national reserve, so that even if it's coming from Hoima and we have a crisis in Gulu, we sort that crisis. Yeah, but the good thing is the way this state has always planned, whether it's environment, whether it is, I mean, not environment, fisheries, or it is whether it's our minerals, or it is tourism, it is never tagged to a region. It is seen as a natural resource. We are told how much revenue we made, or how much revenue we plan to make, whether it's agriculture, whatever, and how much we need to expend. So if this is also carried along that line, but most importantly, the politics reduced, that will help sort of things.
Tom, coming to you, especially let's look at OPEC, which is really called or referred to as a cartel there. The price volatility, the market volatility there, the quotas of supply that are in there. When we look at the international market, we're talking about 230,000 barrels per day. When you look at that and you look at Uganda's oil and what projection of 25 to 30 years, as a regulator, as people who think about the cost and the revenues there, how does Uganda still get value out of this, not just for the country, but for posterity?
Thank you, Timothy. That's a very good question. So as an authority, we have stress tested the projects that we have to every internationally known scenario surrounding climate change and energy transition. Those scenarios have been modeled to develop long-term price forecasts and impacts on international demand and supply. Now, what we have seen is that the world will continue to have need for oil and gas beyond 2050, right? There are scenarios where there will be an accelerated decline in that demand, but for most of the scenarios, there will be a continued need for oil and gas. So Uganda's crude, first of all, is low cost to develop. As an example, the technical cost of developing crude in this country is below $20 a barrel. The break-even cost means every cost of bringing that barrel to the market, right, is below $30 a barrel. Today, the international oil price is about 82, 81. That means off every barrel, there is $50 that we have to share between us and the companies. And we know that the state is taking more than 70% of that. So there is a significant value that this country will derive on every barrel in terms of cash. But then also, when we refine one barrel, the value addition that you derive. So you will get refined petroleum products like petrol, diesel, gasoline, jet oil, and the like. But then also you will have industries that use the residue to get tarmac for your roads, to produce fertilizers, to produce plastics, polyester for clothes. So the value add is almost 4 times or whatever you put into the refinery. So there's a significant value add, not only from a revenue side, but even from an industrial side. That's why as an authority, we know that the refinery will be the industrial game changer in this country. To add on, in terms of the revenue, as the commissioner said, this country has an oil and gas revenue management policy the Public Finance Management Act passed in 2015 established the Petroleum Fund. That fund now has a fiscal rule that was developed by the Ministry of Finance in tandem with the Ministry of Energy and the Petroleum Authority. What the fiscal rule says is there is a portion of the revenue that will go to support the budget, right? There is a small portion. Then there's another portion that will be invested to earn interest, and that money will be available both for current and future generations. The component that will support the budget will be utilized for infrastructure development, and that will be invested will earn a return, and therefore, like Norway now has a petroleum investment account, right, that is worth over $1.3 trillion. If they liquidated that farm, every Norwegian would walk away with not less than $500,000. Now that is an ambition that we want to develop as a country. So the policies are already in place. The money will be allocated as it is, but now the ball passes to our Honorable here, that the money that is allocated for budget support must be utilized in a manner that generates return for this country. Because what you're doing is you're removing your asset from under the ground, and the principle that you must use is transfer that asset from crude into other productive assets like infrastructure, but also human capital that are more productive over the long term. We have already seen Ugandans leave this country and work in Mozambique, in the Middle East, in Nigeria. So it is an ambition that we must continue with the support of everyone.
They're talking about human capital flight, but let's get to something else. What I like is especially the stress tests that you have done to be able to see the posterity of oil in this country and its production. But let's get to the ones that have been around for a while. When we look at agriculture, when we look at tourism, we look at what revenues tourism has brought in, we look at 24% that agriculture contributes to GDP. What linkages are there between these two? Because one could make the other suffer, especially if we look at our land, if we look at climate there. Those are some of the things, but also technological transfer into these areas. Professor said something, economic diversification. Thinking about, with our population growing, we need to think how we diversify this economy to take care of everyone. So how do we link those two without one usurping the other, but also how do we have technology transfer in between there so that we have a growth of an economy, but also that can sustain its population?
Thank you, Timothy. That's a very good question. So our approach as an authority has been to, one, partner with the private sector players in each of those sectors. Two, we have undertaken research to understand what was done internationally. So if you look at places like Abu Dhabi and Dubai, they have developed their tourism based on the revenue that they got from their oil and gas. So you're trying to see what has worked, how can we tweak what has worked to make it work here locally. Now what we have seen for the agriculture space is, number one, you must have capacity. Two, you must be able to meet the standard that the international market wants. I always use an example. I was privileged to do my master's in Scotland, in a small town called Dundee. Every week, they used to bring in a consignment of yellow bananas from Ghana. Those bananas would run out in 2 days. If you spent a day without going to the supermarket, you would not find them. Now, why is it that they are shipping them from Ghana and not Uganda? It is an issue of standards. It is an issue of packaging. They pack them when they're still green. They then land in the UK. They're put in a special room where they ripen. By the time they're on display, they're fully yellow with no spot. The challenge that we have here is we don't have the capacity. We haven't built, we are not able to meet the standard, and also we have not built our enterprises to fit into that value chain. So what the oil and gas space is giving us, it is giving us a test run. What standards can we meet? What capacity do we have? Where are the gaps? And then how do we plug those gaps? So that is what we are doing in the agriculture space. We have had some successes. There are other areas of learning, but it is a continuous process that we continue to undertake. Similar for aspects around tourism. Tourism, you will find the biggest gap is in international marketing. No one knows Uganda. No one knows that Uganda has more gorillas than Rwanda, right? No one knows that. Now, we have international partners in some of the biggest tourism generators around the world, China, France. But do we have the capacity? I remember, I think it was Amos Wekesa who shared with us that he got a team of 300 Chinese that wanted to come to Uganda. And he almost ran mad because we didn't have the capacity to host them. We don't. We are capacity constrained. So those are some of the gaps that the research we're undertaking is helping us identify. And again, we continue to work both with government and the private sector to see how we can solve some of those aspects. The major challenge, of course, was an area under financing, but we also did a study with the Uganda Bankers Association that highlighted how the oil and gas space can help the banking sector. As an example, Nigeria was able to develop funds that are now worth over $500 million. This capital is cheap. It is lent at about 8% over a long term, 8 to 15 years. And the individual loan capacity is around $10 million. And it is mainly for capacity expansion, asset acquisition. So there is opportunity for the sector to spur local capital development to help sophisticate the local economy. What separates low-income countries from high-income countries is the high-income countries do high-income activities. As an example, Japan has been producing cars from the 1960s. There are cars on our roads that are model 1980, but they've been on our roads. And Japan has been producing those cars from 1980. What do we produce as Uganda that is value-adding and high income? That is the difference. So we need to use the oil and gas sector to help us to sophisticate the local economy. But I will tell you, it is not a simple task.
Okay. Honorable, let me come to you. Honorable Mara, and we have talked about different areas there, but let me stick it to you. CNOOC from China, Total from France, this balance between the West and the East, you used the word that was very interesting, romanticizing the West and the East. Doesn't that put the country in a very delicate space?
It is actually true. We are in a very delicate space. Let me start from, let me first give credit to the regulator and to Engineer Malenga for the, how do I call it, the institutional readiness, and in terms of legislation which they help put in place, and also the compliance standards which they have done. We visited, and even disposal of those waste materials, they're up to the point. So in terms of what they have been able to do, that is okay. We have had a conversation on production sharing agreement. And just to summarize it, that is how money will be divided, shared, simply put. And what is happening down there with the two companies? They are doing a lot of activities on a daily basis or on a monthly. They are bringing equipment, which you talked about is fabricated, and they are costing them. They are costing them. So now it is up to us and the experts is talking about the expertise we have built. It's up to us to go and look at what they have brought, quantify them. I am, goodness me, our Auditor General needs to get the technical team during the time of audit, so that we finally say, okay, Total Energies or Sonok, you've been able to put in so much. On the basis of that, we are giving you a rebate. We are paying you through the cost oil. That's what we'll be doing. That's what the production agreement basically entails. So if we are sloppy on the ground, they will walk away with the oil.
True.
They will bring all kata things because we don't know the pricing outside. They will say this is a $500 billion. Who are we to deny and say it is not the amount? So our steady state of readiness must be above everything, because these guys have not come here to party. They have come here to make money, and they will do everything under the sun to what? To extract as much as possible. So number one, production sharing agreement. We must make sure that we have our technical teams on the ground to do it. The other second thing is on downstream, which is another technical term, upstream and downstream. But downstream is now the us, the local Ugandans who are now supposed to benefit and participate in this oil production. He's saying we have been very ready. I don't think we have been ready. I'm like the other one, whom Jesus said Jesus is resurrected and is alive. I'm the other guy.
Thomas.
I am the Thomas.
Like me now.
You're doubting.
I am doubting because the so-called Ugandan companies are not Ugandan companies. We should be able to see, as a banker, I want to see a reflection in the growth of our reserves. That's why if you look to go to Angola, Angola is almost dollarized because that money, the GDP went more than 10 times, 20 times. The economy became so huge, but it was dollarized. That's why one of the most expensive cities in the world is Luanda, in Angola, because of how much dollars they have. Me, I don't see the dollars here. Maybe the magic will come when it starts coming down. So the downstream participation, Timothy, should have given us the commensurate revenue that our population really desires. Especially our business communities. Why can't we now prepare these machines to do the welding? Why don't we, those things, the pipelines you've been showing us, why don't we fabricate this thing here? And then we keep that money home. All these are being imported. So the benefits to the country, I don't think we were ready. Timothy, you've talked about how do we link this to agriculture. My view is that currently we are struggling through UDC for government to participate in kind of equity investment in some of the companies that we have to do manufacturing, to process our products. So some of these monies, when they become ready, let's capitalize UDC so that Ugandan company can have access to capital. The same thing with UDB and microfinance support. That is how our private sector can actually have access to money. And then we begin now to focus on agricultural production in some form of manufacturing that we want. The other one also, if the refinery is ready, as Tom said, there will be some auxiliary, more complicated chemical industries that can pop up from that area of Hoima, Chilenga, and Kingfisher. So some factory, more sophisticated, can develop. But whose factories are going to be erected there? Are there going to be Ugandan companies? Are we ready to go and start manufacturing something? Are we prepared, our companies? Or still we will have another foreign investors from China, from Total coming and said, no, we already have experts. They are going to start manufacturing tar here.
Honorable,
Yes.
just a follow-up question
Yes.
on two areas. One,
Yes.
what does this mean for our balance of trade? That's one. Two, where should this revenue be put? Is infrastructure and capital, human capital development our most urgent needs?
Yes. So the most important thing, Timothy, infrastructure is very important. Look at our roads. You know, living in this city is a shame. It's very shameful. Personally, I feel terrible. Every morning I wake up. So we need to make sure we fix these roads. Let's have a first-class roads. Let's build our schools. Let's build our hospitals. We have been struggling with this one, Lubowa, which has failed to come up. Maybe we will have sufficient money to deal the Lubowas of this world. So
Maybe
that
not
money should
Lubowa,
go
but
towards infrastructure. And I would agree that also this money is for the future generation. Because some of the children being born when we are all gone, they should also come and have the benefits of the oil. But the question is, in whose economy do we invest this money? The question now about absorption now comes in. If you externalize this money to Europe, it will be developing a European nation. You send it to Singapore, it will be developing another country. So have we built our financial markets in Uganda to really making sure we use our resources? And of course, right now, we spent almost $3.5 billion building these infrastructures, roads going to Hoima, to Bulisa. We built the airport, the Kabale. We've asked these questions in Parliament. We said, okay, what was the purpose of this airport? Is to allow these jumbo jets, these big ones that are carrying those central processing facility to land. And then later on, I don't know how they will carry them and fix them at Tilenga. But when that process, that's number one important reason why we built that, to land those antinovs. When they have landed, they have fixed the central processing facility, what do we use with the airport?
Yes. That's the thing.
We have asked the question, they have not given us the answer. Now we have the roads, one of the best roads are on Hoima Road and Bulisa. Yes. Are we using it now? What are we bringing to Kampala or
and
exporting?
that's the question, Honorable, I'm asking, because one, you're in charge of budgeting.
Yes.
So the question is infrastructure really a viable option for this revenue?
Of course. Now, let me give you an example. You know, there's something around money. We call it the velocity of circulation of money. The speed at which money runs and goods and services run will provide a bigger collection in tax revenue. You are going to, if you clean up, for example, if we had a dual highway up to Malaba, you'll clean up all these trucks that have been lying on. They will load it down to Chikubu here. What is going to take them 10 days to do, they will take 2 days. So you're turning up goods and money is running. So at the end of the day, your economy will grow. So having a viable infrastructure is not a joke. You have seen Tanzanian testing their smart railways, the electrical trains. People are moving fast and goods and services. People are not spending time on the road. Instead of having a meetings, getting some deal going, you are in a traffic. So the question of, and also we need to educate our children. You know, we are now going towards greater technology, robotics. Our children must learn some of these things when they're young so that they can catch up with the world. We are not competing with Ugandans only. We are competing with the world. So spending in infrastructure is really important. And finally, Timothy, Ghana discovered its oil, like us, in 2007. They went quickly and they extracted the oil. They were not slow like us. Yeah, that's why I will never take the excuses from our technocrats here. You spent 17 years looking for oil from down there. Unacceptable. Ghana finished it quickly. But I was in Ghana sometimes. There was a presidential debate between President Kofo now and Hama, I think the other one, John. And I can tell you the debate was whether oil was now a silver bullet that will transform the Ghanaian economy. Do you know what surprised me? Both presidents, I mean, the political contestants for presidency, they said no. They said agriculture. We need to focus on our cocoa. We need to go into agricultural manufacturing. So while we look at this thing, and as we have seen already, we have spent substantial amount of money. But I would want to tell Ugandans that this one is not going to transform us and send us to heaven. When we get this money, we should use it basically to transform our agriculture and our manufacturing. That is going to be the future of Uganda. This one will help us to deal with the debt, build our infrastructure, and is a finite commodity. It will disappear. We'll reserve something as per the law for our future generation and something for our budget support. But we must continue to focus on agro-industrialization, commercial agriculture, ICT, and services. That is going to save us as a country.
The viability of this oil and gas production, how viable is it for both the country but also its citizens?
The oil and gas production is viable for the Ugandans and all of us in this country. But to take it further, we just have to look at how do we get maximum benefits from this oil production. It has already been hinted here by Honorable that we don't see the $20 billion that have been invested so far in our reserves. And maybe most of it is going out of the country because of the foreign companies which are operating here. And he has a point to some extent, and it's that there are things we should be doing which maybe we haven't done, or we need to do better. We've been told about the national content laws and the regulations, but I think what we need to do more is making sure that our local Ugandan companies that are participating in this oil industry have the capacity to reap even during this development phase and even during the production phase. And interacting with some of these local Ugandan companies, even when they don't have the expertise and they want to form joint ventures with foreign companies, they are knocked out by one aspect, lack of capital. They don't have the capital. You find there is a project, and that project requires millions of dollars, and they are saying, okay, we are forming a joint venture with you because that's what the law says. And when they say, what are you putting on the table? The Ugandan companies are lacking. But countries that have really benefited much from their oil reserves have gone ahead and done an affirmative action where the government has a fund that it gives to its local companies, not to leave them to commercial banks where the interest is going to be in 20s. They give them funding to make sure that they are able to invest and also get big magnitude contracts within the oil industry. And that way you are assured that this money for the local companies will remain in the country. Secondly, even these other countries that have really seen the benefits from their oil industry has been through how well their national oil companies participate. And countries like Norway, they are talking about countries like Malaysia, that have really shown big benefits from the oil industry, have built very strong national oil companies.
The Petronas.
Yeah, Petronas in Malaysia. You have, there was Statoil in Norway,
yes,
which actually became a private company. They now developed another one called Petroleum, which also has also become another big company because they are participating in exploration on their own. They have developed their capacity from partnering with international oil companies. They have developed their own capacity to be able to do their own exploration, own development, own production as national oil companies. And I think we also need to make sure that our national oil company is brought to a level where they can easily take up projects on their own and then also be able to develop oil fields which international oil companies may leave behind. Because in every area there is what they call marginal oil fields, which the big companies don't want to touch because they think they are too small. But national oil companies come up and develop them and are able to make them viable for national benefit, and whatever they do remains in that country. So we as a country still have a lot to do, and I agree the laws are there, the regulations are there, but then the other question is how are they implemented? Of course, the regulators are telling us they are very well implemented, but to me, as a strategy professor, I look at the laws and the regulations as a strategic plan. A plan is a plan, and you only know how good you have executed your plan when you see the results. So the implementation of the good laws and the regulations is also very critical to ensuring that we see our oil industry viable and beneficial to Ugandans.
And Abdul, just a follow-up question, especially with this golden goose of ours, we're looking for the golden egg. What do we need to do to see oil production in 2025, or the feasibility of what we're thinking about? We are over-dreaming, and the achievement is not possible right now. When is it feasible, from your experience?
This oil production in 2025 has been hinted on. The central processing facility being 30% in progress. We have the wells. You also need the wells that are going to produce the oil from the ground to feed the central processing facility. You need the interfield pipelines, like pipelines from the different wells and central processing facilities to connect to the main export pipeline. Also have to be put in place. Then you also need the East African crude oil pipeline, ECOP, to be completed with its terminal in Tanga completed. This, like the ECOP, is a mega project. I don't know if construction has started, but to me, and you're asking me from my experience, a project like constructing ECOP to the time of commissioning would require a minimum of 3 years. We are in 2024, and we expect to produce oil by end of 2025 in 2 years' time. A big challenge, but we can work towards it. But it won't be the first project that has delayed. We've seen the projects.
No, it's the same project. Postponed about 3, 4, 5 times. It's okay.
No. Honorable, what has been postponed before, we didn't have an FID in place.
Yes. Okay.
But at least for these projects, an FID is in place, and
so
some work has
money
started.
Is available. Money is available.
Money is available.
The final investment.
The issue is the project execution period. 2025 is a big pie.
That's where it brings me to the Commissioner. Mr. Commissioner, when you look at, because now this is the Ministry of Energy we're talking about, when we look at dams, if we talk about dams, fortunately Honorable Omara is here, they really take a while. The money is available. The policies and the regulators are available. You as a ministry are available. 2025, is it feasible, or you're in wishful thinking?
2025 is what we announced. I think it was either 1st or 2nd. It was 1st February 2022. I agree the concerns which are being raised. Yeah. We all know what happened shortly after that. We had the issue of Russia-Ukraine conflict. It has caused some bit of dynamics, whereby you find certain materials like steel, countries like China, they are trying to hold on it. So those ones have an impact on the time frame. But we are working along the clock to make sure that within 2025 we should have the first oil. Also we have the issue of funding. You know, the environmental campaigners. We all know that in COP26, it was held in Scotland, where they said no fossil fuels. But in 2022, when this conflict started, We saw what happened in Scotland. UK government opened up new acreage. As we talk now, they are doing a lot of exploration.
Over 100.
So you can see the dynamics. Is it really environmental issues or there is politics behind? But that's another debate. But we are all working to make sure that come 2025, maybe towards the end, we should have the first oil. Honorable talked about Mutwara. The good thing, I'm from the other side, where with the Audu Yakagawa at those initial days. Songo gas was discovered in 1977. When did they put it on stream? I think it was 2004. Now, when you look at the infrastructure of gas and crude, and more so, if you look at Dar es Salaam vis-a-vis Songo is an island. There is the Indian Ocean to come here. So you find that issues of compensation is not as bad as the issue of land. When you look at, he mentioned about Ghana. Ghana, first of all, Ghana was producing oil before. Ghana lost a lot of equipment in Angola. They had equipment, you know, national company of Ghana used to do even, they used to provide services outside. But when Ghana re-entered into the oil and gas, the discovery of Jubilee is offshore. It is just a matter of bringing the floating system. You just connect. It is not like us here, we have to ask for land and other things. Now, if you come to our land laws, you know, until we have compensated adequately and prompt, it's when someone says, I'm ready to leave. But what we have done in oil and gas, particularly for our professor here, women and whatever, we have made it a condition. The consent should be the couple. Never. The bank account has to be shared. Even if you have an account in the same bank, we make sure you open a new account where you have two signatories.
Yes.
Otherwise, people used to do other things. So we have those things. Now, on the issue of capacity building, I've been in this sector. Last week on Thursday, I almost shed tears. The under 20, no, the 20 under 40. 20 younger ladies were awarded different awards, engineering and other things, which was not the case before. Banking and other things. So I think a professor should pick interest to know what link we have done. Now, when it comes to capacity building, skilling, we have made it a condition that most of these skilling institutions get the necessary support. Now, we talked of Uganda Petroleum Institute. I'm part of the governing council. Recently, we entered into agreements where Total staff are going to be trained at Uganda Petroleum Institute. So is SINOC and others. So we are making sure that that institute, as we have put it in the center of excellence, it should be training people from different areas within that. So you train from there and you go. And even this location, it was not by mistake. We made sure that it is near the what?
The oil well.
The oil area. So there's a deliberate effort of making sure that Ugandans are skilled in the right skills and the right time. Recently, there was an issue that even these welders are not saying, no, make an effort. If there are areas where they are lacking, make sure they are what? That gap is covered. So we are making that effort, and the regulator is on the ground. Now, on the issue of costs, we are under production agreement. No production agreement, you have to be on top to make exactly what is it. Yes. Every year, Petroleum Authority have to have what we call, SCM, annual general meeting.
Advisory committee.
Advisory committee meeting, where the company presents the plan, what they are going to do. So whatever comes in the course of the year, it should be within the agreed plan. Yes. And later, Auditor General comes to know that, yes, the ministers indicated this, what have you done? So it is not that things are coming without us knowing. Even what they are bringing now, the regulator plus government officials go and see, is it the right thing? So that's the process which we are going through. So there is a lot of efforts, and we are doing what we can do. Now, when it comes to the issue of trade, what is it?
Downstream on jobs.
Downstream.
Yes.
Jobs, yes. As we see, we know that during the construction and other things, the number is big. But when we start producing, the number will go down. But what we are seeing is that the skills which these Ugandans are getting, they are being utilized somewhere else. For example, we did, there are students who undertook training in welding. What happened? We found most of them going to Kira Motors. They're now welding those bodies of the buses. We also saw a good number going to last year when we had the World Cup in Doha? They went to Qatar to do those things, scaffolding, you see a younger lady climbing many meters to tie those things where you people stand on. So all those things were from here, and the certification which they get, we made it an effort that those certificates should be awarded in Uganda. So Opito, Sitan Gills, all those are coming from here. So you go outside, they're internationally recognized. So those are the efforts which government of Uganda plus partners we have done. Africa World Bank has supported and other development partners. So there has been a lot of effort, and the only prayer is that we need to work together. We have talked about the Public Finance Management Act. All revenue from oil and gas is now collected by Uganda Revenue Authority. Even means of energy, where they say there's training fees, we don't receive that money. It has to go through a system. Now when it goes through a system, it is deposited in the Petroleum Fund. Now from that Petroleum Fund, it is the role of Parliament to say, okay, part of this should go and support the budget, this one should be invested. Now the challenge we have is, as he has said, the law says we should invest this money outside. I'm a member on the Investment Advisory Committee. We're having a challenge. Why can't we invest here? We have institutions which we can get money. But the law is...
We need to amend the law. And
so that's the challenge we have.
Invested in Nairobi, we have a huge exchange rate loss because of the volatility in the market there.
No.
So you rather keep the dollars here for a while, even unless it's very big.
I agree with my colleague here that these laws, they are there, but let us. So we are now putting institutions to make sure you follow up to the dot.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you parting shots. I will start with the professor. I'll go to Tom, Honorable Mara, Abdu, and finally, Commissioner Malinga. Professor.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I think the discussion has been very impressive, but as I can say again, it's a very good strategy. We needed to diversify our economy. But if it is jobless growth, if it is the kind of growth where people don't see the benefits in terms of jobs, because that's one of our biggest crises. We've talked about diversifying industry, that will be good, but I think let us ensure, as the members have assured, that the money goes to the sectors which are just not going to drive the economy in terms of revenue, but also drive the economy in terms of creating employment. Then we shall have peace and we shall reap the benefits of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tom?
Thank you, Timothy, and thank you to our viewers for sparing time and being with us up until this moment. Timothy, if they forget everything I said, the fundamental benefit that this sector will bring is the sophistication it can create in the local economy before the revenue lands. That is fundamental. Now we are extending all efforts to derive full value from the investment that we have today, but also to extend that investment to other sectors so that they are sophisticated to be internationally competitive in the long term beyond the oil and gas sector. That is fundamental. Two, it is a collaborative effort. We acknowledge this government has challenges in many areas. I want to assure Ugandans, oil and gas is not one of them. I acknowledge there are constraints here and there. I've had some talks about a hospital, but in oil and gas, we don't have those challenges because it is private sector led, it is audited by the state, and that money is recovered. So it is in all of our best interests that we do what we're meant to do, and we request and implore everyone to work together, prepare and come and participate in this sector because the oil is yours and the government is simply managing it on your behalf.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mara.
I think there is something that engineer talked about, COP26, which actually the resolution was there was no more exploration or extraction of fossil fuel. We were so lucky that Russia invaded Ukraine, and then even the developed nations, because of the disruption, the supply disruptions, they are now exploring their own oil. Then there is COP 28 in Dubai that allowed us, they adopted the principle, last in, last out, in terms of messing up your environment. So we have an opportunity now. The global world has given us opportunity to exploit this oil, and for Total Energies to invest in their money. Now, engineer, let's fast track this thing and extract this oil as quickly as possible. Secondly, that law where we said this money should be invested outside, who tells you that having $10 billion or $20 billion in our reserves will kill us? We need to look at that law. And we, the bankers, will do the analysis and making sure we keep this money home. We'd rather build our infrastructure and use it carefully and see how best it can work. So that law must be revisited. Thank you for reminding me. And some of these people, they have studied abroad. Sometimes they're also the agents of the imperialists. They come here, we give them jobs, they advocate for the foreign capital. We are watching you.
Abdu, over to you. I don't know if I should say something.
Thank you so much, viewers. Thank you, team. One important thing I would like to conclude with is the fear for oil losing its share in the energy mix is far-fetched. You know, as the world continues to develop and populations grow, the demand for energy is growing. And at the moment, 80% of energy supply comes from oil and gas. And 2050, 70% of the oil and gas will still be supplying part of the energy mix. So, but of course, that said and done, the fears are there. The activists are there, and the earlier we have our oil out, the better. The better. Such that even if by 2050, we have also invested in the other cleaner sources of energy, because we can use oil money to invest in other sources of energy. And
energy transition.
Yeah, so we can, and all the big oil companies are using money from oil to fund their transition. Yes. So Uganda, why not? We can also do it. Secondly, the linkage between our oil and other industries is very critical. You talked about the airport, the Kabalega airport in Hoima, and bringing in equipment for the central processing facility and the other supporting infrastructure. But then what does it go back with? So why don't we have a very strong linkage, at least with agriculture? Yes. Increase production of specific things in maybe Bunyoro region, where the airport is. We were told about the bananas. Why can't those planes go back with bananas produced here? So that requires like an affirmative. Say we have to make sure that this airport is active even without the oil activities. So if they bring in the oil equipment, they go back with what we have produced as a country. So, but that would mean we use the oil money to develop other areas of the economy so that the airport carries in and out.
Thank you very much. Finally, Commissioner Mandinga.
I just want to continue from where he has ended. When you look at that airport, Kabalega International Airport, the first thinking was to deliver equipment. And if you go to our records, that airport has been fully supported by Ministry of Energy and Development. We just entered into an MOU with Ministry of Works, and Works gave us the CAA to do the supervisory work. So that airport, when we realized that after bringing equipment, what next? That's how those leakages come in. Tourism is linked to that, and agriculture. So now it is now the onus on us to make sure that we expound on that. On the issue of vandalism, just to what the professor was worried of. In 1992-93, Buseruka was well known as the center of ADF. But if you go now, Buseruka is now internationally known because the airport is there, the refinery mill is there, there is even a mini hydro, so it is now the opposite. So because of the efforts of government and other stakeholders, that place has been secured. Now, lastly, I want to thank UBC and for you to give some of us an opportunity, because yesterday when I was told that you should appear here, I said, for what? But later I said, let me try my level best so that I can go and maybe share the little. But I want to use this opportunity to request fellow Ugandans that this resource is ours. The fears that this will benefit a certain part of the world, the country, is not true, because 90% of the revenue is going to be through that process. It is the other 5 which is aggregated to the districts which host the resource, and also the cultural leadership. It is also catered for in that law. So it is a good law, but it needs support. For those cases where there are issues of compensation, we know that some of the delays are within maybe conflict between families, because it is until we are sure who is going to benefit to be compensated. It is not compensated now. Those are the delays which are there. This compulsory acquisition and acquisition, it is by the law. That this is public good. So where there is interest of government, you do compensation. The money is there in the court. In the process, if the person wins, then government will pay more. But if not, what the chief government valuer has evaluated is what is in the account. So I want to end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me just read one message that has come through. There are quite a number, but just this one. Only more comprehensive environmental impact studies need to be carried out, especially regarding the dumping of waste from the pipeline. Peter Sande here. Thank you, Timothy. Thank you to Peter for listening and watching us. Gentlemen and lady, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for gracing and agreeing to come to our invite and discuss such pertinent issues. To the team that has been on the floor, that has ensured that we have a very fruitful discussion today, thank you very much. We'll end it this way. Truth is like oil. Even if you pour enough water in it, it will always float. Good morning.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Nyati Motion Pictures brings you Tuko Pamoja Kigezi segment. If Uganda is the pearl of Africa, then Kigezi must be the pearl of Uganda. Learn about how the Bachiga, Bafumbira and Batwa are the oldest republicans in Uganda.
Kigezi as such.
We are different groupings. Bachiga,
Batwa,
Bafumbira.
and there was no king as such.
In some of these other places, they say every Mchiga is a king in their home.
They have always been Republicans.
My great-grandfather called Katuleje.
He resisted them.
Whom I talked about.
This queen mobilized the whole of Kigezi, Rwanda to rebel.
Premiering on Saturday the 4th of May, 3 to 8 p.m. at Ndere Center, Ntinda.
To get a ticket, call 0778 787 660. Tuko pamoja?
UBC, inspiring Uganda.